really topic number one that I wanted to touch on is really the different funding buckets, because as things have unfolded since last March, there are, it kind of started with one and then it went to another. And then, it's really snowballed, which again, is great because additional funding continues to become available, but it's also muddied the waters. So I feel like it's a good place to start to just kind of establish what different buckets we're talking about, what's available, what's not available at this point in the game.
All right, so we'll dive into this. So this really, when I'm talking K through 12, there's 5 separate funding programs out there. Back in March of 2020, the GEER, or Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, was established. And ESSER, which is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, was established in March of 2020. Now, the Governor's Education Relief Fund was first stocked up with $3 billion. That particular fund is for the governor to use at his discretion to help out education and remote learning. ESSER was more designed for K through 12, and the money was based off of the Title I funds that the schools received back in 2019. So they took the Title I funds that the schools received in 2019, and that's what they used as the benchmark for the original ESSER fund, which was $13.2 billion. Now, these two funds can be used for anything, okay? Anything technology-wise. There's no limitation on this. So whether it be something to do with client, cloud, firewall, remote access, anything can be used with these two funds. Well, Congress went back to work, okay? December 2020 rolled around, and we saw another emergency relief fund come out, and that was the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund round 2, okay? Now, this particular fund, which was part of the SERSA Act, put another $52.8 billion, $52.8 billion into ESSER 2 funds. Now, ESSER 2 funds can be used for the same thing ESSER funds can be used for. Anything technology-wise. Now, don't get me wrong, these funds aren't just specifically for technology. It's to help support the schools, but there's a whole lot of money right there. So then, this last March 2021, we saw this huge bill get signed into law, which is the ARP plan, the ARP. So within ARP, there are separate buckets of money. Now, ARP in itself is a $122 billion fund. I mean, just looking at all this money, you're like, oh my goodness.
I know.
So ARP itself is a $122 million fund. In that particular fund, there are certain buckets that we want to take a look at. The Emergency Connectivity Fund, which is a $7.1 billion fund, is a fund to help make sure that schools are connected and we're taking care of out of classroom learning, okay? In those funds, when you look at the SonicWall solution, and I'm just kind of playing with the SonicWall solution right now, our access points or Wi-Fi solution is the only thing that qualifies within the ARP program, okay? But within the ARP program, there's another $350 billion assigned to tribal communities to help fortify tribal communities, a very underserved part of our community, by the way. I highly recommend folks get involved and get out there and help take care of the tribal nations. But $350 billion for tribal nations. There's another $2.75 billion for non-public schools. And let me back up. ESSER 2 also supplied $2.5 billion for non-public schools, so private schools. So each one of these tiers supplies another level, a different level of funding. And then we still have E-rate. Okay, let's not forget E-rate.
And then there's still E-rate, yeah.
And then within E-rate, don't forget, we SonicWall, we play within category 2 in E-rate, which is firewalls, switch, and access points. So those are the 5 main K-12 budgets. But then you also have a support fund called HEER, H-E-E-R. Okay, and that's the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. So there you go. There's a mouthful. There's a lot of funding out there.
It's a fire hose. It's not surprising. It's not surprising that the information gets so easily. It's hard to navigate.